This episode of The Answer is Yes Baja Sessions is brought to you by Baja Bound Insurance Services. Driving to Mexico? You can buy and print out your Mexican auto insurance policy online in minutes with their easy-to-use website. They also have great travel information to help you plan your trip south of the border. Visit bajabound.com.
All right.
Okay, so got Roger Mears on the phone. Roger, you're in Bay of LA, right?
Yes, we're in Bay of LA.
Yeah, now that happens to be one of my favorite places to go because I think it was my first long trip. Can you just tell us how you wound up in Bay of LA, and then I'll let Ryan ask questions beyond that. But I'm curious how somebody winds up in Bay of LA full time.
Yeah, sure. Well, what happened is we, back in the mid-'70s, ran the first Baja 500 and got pretty close to here, to Gonzaga. And then when we ended up coming through LA Bay, I can't remember what for, but it was a race. And then right after I did that, probably the late 70s, one of my best friends come down here to fish all the time. And he knew that I'd been down here for the race and invited me down to do some fishing. And so that's what happened. I ended up getting hooked on this place mainly because of the fishing. And so we'd come down here every Christmas. Every Christmas it'd be a guy thing, and we'd all, about 5 or 6 of us on boats, come down here and fish, for Christmas. And that's how I got hung up on LA Bay, and always said, man, one of these days I'd like to retire here. And racing's been good to the Mears family, and we've done okay. And it's like, hey, we saw how we could actually live down here. And now I'm just living the dream, man.
Right on. Well, Roger, this is Ryan, and I've had the extreme pleasure of getting to stay with you at your house down there, and I've got questions about that. I've got other questions to dive a little deeper about what it's like to really kind of sever ties from the United States and call Mexico your home. Because I know a lot of our listeners, whether they actually end up pulling the trigger and making that move or just continue to dream about it, I think lots of times people are fascinated by those of us that have stepped out and moved to a foreign country. So that would be my first thought or question to ask you is as a guy who has spent better part of your life, from what I know, in Mexico or in and around Mexico for your job with racing, how was that transition going from living in America and calling America your home or United States to calling Mexico your home?
Yeah, well, I still, honestly, I'm still an American. I still love America, obviously. And I haven't divorced myself from America, but to me, my real home is still in America, but my heart and my, this is like it's just a dream. What's the word I'm looking for? But I just love it here. I mean, it's like, there isn't any place I'd rather be. So, this is where I want to be. It's just my wife and I pulled the trigger here a couple years ago, and we finally made the move. And so now we just reverse roles there. We visit America and we live here.
But so practically speaking, Roger, from the standpoint of things that are different, I mean, I get it. You still have, you still consider yourself an American and so on, and I understand that. But there is no Target around the corner, and Home Depot is a long ways away. what are some of the biggest adjustments you've had to make living? And for those of you that are listening that are unfamiliar with Bay of LA, it's a beautiful place, but it is a fairly remote location on the peninsula. So, like how is that part of living in an area so remote?
Yeah, and that's a good point. And it is remote, and I think that was a lot of the attraction to me. Is when I first started coming down here, actually nobody could get a hold of me, so it was great. And now it's changed quite a bit. There's telephones. When we first started coming down here, there was no phone, there was no communication at all, and so we've seen that change. Where probably 12, 15 years ago, we got our first telephone, and the town actually got power about 10 years ago, where it never had power before. It was always generator, and now the town itself has power. Where I'm living, where we're living here is still remote enough that we don't have power, so we're still on generator and solar. So there's a lot of adjustments when you come from a place where I remember leaving California to come down here and was worried about a damn garbage disposal that went out, and I got here and go, garbage disposal, Christ, you don't even hardly have, the last thing you have to worry about is some of those amenities that you're used to there. We haul our own our drinking water we buy in town in bottles and bring it out. We have and then we have a big water tank that we can have water delivered, or we go get it ourselves, whatever, spring water for a big tank that feeds our all our showers, toilets, and all that. So it's it is different. And we're off the grid. It's really fun, and like I said, we're just living the dream. We pinch ourselves all the time because this view. I don't know anybody's. You don't have to be here to see it, but we got a magnificent view of the Sea of Cortez, which is just I fell in love with the Sea of Cortez, and then behind us we have these huge, beautiful in the backyard. So. And I love the desert. It's desert in between, so it's great.
I will say I'm one of the fortunate few that actually has gotten to see that view from your patio. In fact, I slept on a cot the last time I was there, out on that patio, specifically for that reason, to be able to watch the sun come up. But I'm going to go back because you're talking about having to truck your water in and the amenities of home not being as important, like garbage disposal and so on. But all this is coming from a guy who, and I got to ride in it, has an elevator in his house in Bay of LA. So tell us a little bit about that. It's not that bad when you have an elevator.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. My dad wasn't getting around real well here a couple of years ago, and he was going to come down and spend some time with us, and I have these real steep stairs that go to the upper bedroom that he was going to stay in. And I just got to thinking one day, I ought to put a lift in. So I did. I built an elevator, put it in there, and it works great. It works really well. And he loved it. I couldn't get him. He find every excuse he could to use it. Oh, I got to go up and go to the bathroom. I got to go up and shower. So it's worked really well.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed when I saw it. Roger, I've got another question for you. So some of the people are learning. I've spent some time while I lived for a decade down in southern Baja. Yikes. In Cabo. And there were things that the local towns people, there were certain festivals and so on that took place different times a year. I'm not very familiar with Bay of LA and what happens in that town. Are there special times of the year that it would make sense for someone to come and visit? Are there things happening in the town square or fishing tournaments or anything that would be noteworthy of the town that you've been privileged to experience since living there?
Yes, and there's a couple things, and the fishing tournaments are number one. The Guillermo's restaurant and bar in town, and Igor, the son, is a local guide here, and they have tournaments, especially during the warm summer months. And the fishing is just fantastic. I mean, there's no question about that. And then the other thing is they have a race. They have their own Bay of LA 200-mile race that's out south of town that brings a lot of people and a lot of racers every time. It's just started about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it's done really well.
Off-road race, I'm assuming.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, it's a Baja off-road type race.
Right on. Well, so there's been a lot of talk about racing on this conversation here, and I think it makes sense to just kind of give a little bit of background. You said racing's been good to the Mears family, and I'm aware of that, and Jim's aware of that. But since we've got a broad audience here, could you share just a little bit about what that means there? I know your dad, I think even your grandfather was into motorsports, and that's carried on all the way through. I'm pretty sure your kid was on the racetrack at Daytona here last week, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yeah, we've just been racing all our lives. Our dad and I had uncles that raced, and all started back in Wichita, Kansas, back in the 40s. And then we moved to California in the 50s, and my dad raced stock cars and modifieds and jalopies back then, and then my brother and I, just a natural progression to racing go-karts and then midgets and sprint cars, and then of course into Indy cars and off-road and Baja, and it's something that. We've always kind of prided ourselves on. The whole family is into racing and have raced just about every kind of racing that we know of. We've run the Pikes Peak Hill Baja 1,000 races, the Mint 400s, and all the off-road races, plus all the stock car events all across the country, and midgets and sprint cars. I've raced just about everywhere. So we've done that's all we've done. And Lynn Cheneth is one of the best car owners I ever drove for, and of course he lives down here now and has a museum, which is fantastic. And I just gave him all of my trophies from all the wins I was fortunate enough to get, and 200 and some trophies I think I gave him down there to hang up and for people to see, and that's kind of fun. And well, that's something else too. There's a lot of friends down here. I'm surprised how many people that are in off-road that gravitate down here just like me. They're either vacationing and do all their vacations here, or a lot of them are doing the same thing. They're pulling the trigger and decide to stay here most of the time, Well,
I would argue with you. I don't think it should surprise us. I think there's a lot of good reasons that people we know move down there. It shouldn't be a surprise. So I was gonna say to you that I used to really enjoy being in the airport, flying back from Cabo, being in San Diego, and the random conversations that would ensue with people. I always used to love saying to people when they asked how my vacation was, standing in line at immigration in the United States, and I'd say, I don't know, I'm just about to find out, because everybody just assumed because you were coming into the States that you were coming home, and I was actually going on vacation. So you and Carol have been there full time now for about 2 years. And when I first stayed with you, you guys were literally just making the move. And I know you had driven across country with stuff to bring down there. I know you'd had your home there for a while, But what were some of the things that you realized upon making the decision that it was going to be your full-time residence? What did you need to bring? What did you need to